You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast, and exciting news right here. We have teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM's lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM, use bonus code PHNX, and it will get you a $1,000 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using promo code PHNX. Deposit at least $10. And your first wager, and place your first wager on any game, you will receive up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use promo code PHNX or bonus code when you sign up. And to kick off this partnership, we're doing a massive watch party this Saturday at 2 p.m. at the BetMGM Sportsbook at State Farm Stadium. Come watch the last stages of college basketball play out, as they'll have food and beverage specials, giveaways, and massive TVs to watch the games on. Plus, if you register and place your first bet with promo code PHNX when you sign up, you'll receive a PHNX shirt. And now listen to Shane for the quick disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
All right, now joined by the great Jody Ayler. You can check him on Drive, Fox Sports 910, somebody I grew up listening to, Happy Hour with Jody Ayler. And Jody, that was not meant to make you feel old right there. It was just a tip of the cap, a salute, as the kids would say.
I appreciate it. I've got 3 kids that make me feel old enough. You can't add any more logs to that fire.
Well, I'm not looking to do that, so we'll keep it clean right there. All right, Jody, let's get started here. Arizona basketball. I want to get your take on Arizona basketball and Arizona football. I'm of the opinion now that we know 2 things about Arizona basketball. That Tommy Lloyd is a great coach on the court. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think it's also fair to say that he masked a lot of flaws with this roster. And this offseason, we're going to find out how exactly he is the roster constructor and if he can get those guys to take the next step.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's 2 different ways to look at it, right? We're all watching Arizona in 2 different ways. One is Tommy Lloyd replacing Sean Miller. I think we'd all agree that the style of play, the approach, the attitude, the energy, it's all significantly better than it was for a long time under Sean Miller. That's now ancient history. The other part of it that you can't separate is that this program and this fan base, we haven't been to a Final Four in a really, 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 really
right.
long time. And it's really a long wait, and we don't have patience in a big picture sense. In a smaller sense, we do, because we know Tommy Lloyd's just going into year 3, and to your point, has to bring in his guys, do things his way, and he's made the best of a roster and the best of a tough situation. And we appreciate that he sort of came in on a Arizona program that seemed to be teetering on the brink of, are they going to have to go to a smaller name, smaller school coach or an alum, or can they bring in a real deal dude? And so the fact that Arizona right now has a coach that's put them on the map in 2 years again, or put them back on the map, is awesome. I just think, Mike, it's been a long time since this team has been validated with a Final Four, and you just keep looking at your watch.
And let's be honest here, that's what matters here. And again, UCLA fans, when you get back and forth on Twitter, the one thing they have going for them, yes, they haven't won a conference title until this year in 10 years, but you know what? They can say, we've had 4 Final Fours since the last time you made one. Final Fours at the end of the day, and maybe it's shallow to some, are what matters, Jody. I mean, that's, growing up here in Arizona, basically every 4th year under Lute Olson, you could expect a Final Four. 88, 94, 97, 01. 01's the last one. And, it's just crazy to think about a school like that has been to so many Elite Eights, has not been able to get to a Final Four since then.
It's wild. I mean, I think if you would have asked anybody, I was on campus. I was a U of A student in 01. We went and rioted after the loss to Duke down on 4th Avenue.
Oh, you were one of those?
I was one of those. I was one of only 2 riots I've been in my life. Yeah. But then if you would have told anybody at that time, hey, it's going to be 22 plus years until this team and this program is back in a Final Four, nobody would have believed you. Now here we are. It's been a long drought. There's been a lot of close calls. There have been a lot of agonizing defeats. There's been at least 2, if not 3 different coaches that felt like at one point might be able to get to a Final Four. And it's just, you're right. There's no comeback, right? Anytime a fan base fires back with it, 22 years, it's been 2+ decades, there is no comeback. This was a real source of pride for Arizona fans for a very long time, that Lute Olson and the Arizona Wildcat basketball program consistently got to Final Fours. Now, they didn't win championships, and it wasn't every year, but there was a pride that Arizona mattered. And now I just think, the most optimistic thing I could say about this drought is that nothing really matters in college basketball anymore. I mean, there really aren't blue bloods that exist in college basketball anymore. Duke, I don't consider the same without Coach K. Right. Obviously, North Carolina's their struggles. Kansas is probably the closest. Gonzaga's never broken through, won a championship, so it's hard to really take them that seriously. I mean, they're a very, very good program. But to me, I just look at it, I'm like, nothing really matters. It feels like every year is a total reset for every program, every coach, and every legacy. And that's the only kind of silver lining I could give this drought.
And we're going to get into this new era of college basketball in a second, but I wanted to get your take, too, on the roster composition. I salute Kerr Kriisa. I almost said Steve Kerr. I salute Kerr Kriisa for what he did at Arizona. But, Jody, honestly, I just felt that you were somewhat capped. If you have a starting lineup going into next season where you have Pelle Larsson, who can do some very good things, but he can't dribble the ball, and you have Kerr Kriisa, who – I mean, let's be honest here. He's probably going to average about 10 points and 5 assists and shoot 36% from the field. I just think you're really capped at that point if 2 of those 3 are your starting perimeter players. This opens up, obviously, room for Boswell, and we're going to get to it in a second, but Tommy Lloyd's got to hit the portal here. You look around Jacob, if you could throw that graphic up of guys that were in the Elite 8 Sweet 16, these were guys, I mean, you just look at this across the board. Marquise Noel, 17 points. Keontae Johnson, first team all Big 12. Marcus Carr, Serge Jabari Rice, Nigel Pack. With all due respect to the guys that you got, Courtney Ramey and Seth Henderson, Jody, these are the kind of difference makers that Arizona should be able to get in the portal.
Yeah, going back, I agree with you 100%. And I think we're all sort of learning on the fly about the transfer portal and what you can do and what you can't do, because there was a real thought when the portal opened wide that you should be adding just complementary pieces like Courtney Ramey and Seth Henderson that are just kind of off the bench, veteran, steady guys. Now it's pretty clear there's going to be guys available every year that can not only start for your team, that might be able to anchor your team. And I think that mindset is still evolving. Let's go back to Kerr Kriisa for a second, because I think this is a really important point to make about his Arizona career. I think Kerr Kriisa would have been the perfect 4-year player for the Arizona Wildcats. There's a time where that player in college basketball doesn't play much as a freshman, plays a little bit as a sophomore. Junior year might have been the 6th man off the bench. Senior year, depending on the composition, might have been the starting 2-guard, 1-guard, or might have still been the 6th man off the bench. And obviously, the greatest example of that in college basketball history is probably Jason Terry, who was just that guy, right? Mm-hmm. Kerr Kriisa was never the kind of player that should have been anchoring a Final Four college basketball team. But because of the circumstances, the change in coaching staff, and what was needed to kind of keep the ship afloat, you kind of had to give him a really big role in order to just keep some semblance of a roster together. So I don't blame Tommy Lloyd. I don't blame Kerr Kriisa, nor do I blame, frankly, Arizona fans that kind of grew tired of his antics. I think it ran its course. I always view Kerr Kriisa like this is a comp that if people watch the NBA and are Suns fans, he's kind of Arizona's campaign.
I knew you were going to go there. You're going to talk about a lefty there, Jody?
Yeah, it's also like campaign will drive you insane. He just does. But there are moments where campaign will carry your team for like 7 minutes, and it's beautiful. That Kerr Kriisa is an off-the-bench microwave scorer. Who cares about the shot selection? Who cares about the decision-making? Come in, hit a few shots, do a few heat check, then take your spot on the bench. Arizona, he was miscast as a 30-minute a night point guard. I know he led the conference in assists, but that's to his credit. I really do appreciate what Kerr Kriisa meant to the program. I go back to when Sean Miller took over and guys like Derek Williams stuck around and they helped build this early foundation.
Solomon Hill, guys like that.
He deserves to be sort of mentioned in that same conversation as guys that didn't have to stick around. They did. And Tommy Lloyd won a hell of a lot of basketball games in a large part because players like Kerr Kriisa trusted their future to him.
And you know what we found out, too, and what Arizona needs to get in the portal? And, Jacob, you could throw that other one up about guys that are in the portal. And there are some other names, obviously, in there as well that have entered. Your TJ Bombas, your Caleb Loves. There's guys out there that are already in the portal. And, Jody, quite frankly, Arizona needs some dogs. Arizona, you saw in that game against Princeton that you had a lot of guys. Azuolas Tubelis did a lot of good stuff, like you said about Kerr Kriisa, massive tip of the cap. But he didn't really want the ball there at the end of the game against Princeton. I mean, I still remember that 16-foot jumper that he had, and he kind of tentatively dribbled it in and then shot it, and it was blocked. Only person that really wanted the shot was Courtney Ramey, and that's to his credit. He's just not good enough. So you've got to get guys, I think, that embrace that moment more so than anything, along with being talented, obviously.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Tubelis, the only dog Tubelis has in him is the kind that's peeing on the rug inside over and over again. And you're just like, come on, like, when's this going to change? And he's a very good player, but 2 years in a row, it's clear the moment is just not his thing. And that's we'll see what his future holds. Here's the concern, right? Couple things. You put up that graphic, and I've been following the transfer portal. There's always so many combo guards out there, right? Every year you're going to be able to find 5 different 6'5", sub 6'5" combo guards that want to shoot high volume at a okay shooting percentage. They're a dime a dozen in basketball. They're a dime a dozen in pickup basketball. They're a dime a dozen in college hoop. They're a dime a dozen in the NBA. Not only do they need some dogs, they need some freaking wings, man. They need 6'6" plus, put the ball on the floor, strong, take and absorb contact, finish at the rim, bark at the opposing team, stare down the bench, come back down, make a three. Like there used to be this huge gap between the NBA and college basketball, and then they extended the three-point line in college hoops, and it's pretty homogenous now. I think in basketball, period, you need jumbo wings that can do everything to win at the highest level. And I know that this tournament has sort of scrambled everyone's brains of like what wins in college hoops, what doesn't. If you look at most of these teams, they've got a 6'7", 6'8" guy that's just doing work on both sides. And that's just a universal truth now. And Arizona doesn't have one on the roster, doesn't have one in the pipeline, and I think that's a huge problem.
Well, that was a hallmark of Lute's teams and, heck, even Sean Miller's teams. People talk about point guard you, and deservedly so, but you look at it from Michael Dickerson to Richard Jefferson to Hassan Adams to Andre Iguodala to Rondé Hollis-Jefferson to Aaron Gordon to Solomon Hill. You have had an assembly line of those players, and quite frankly, Pelle Larsson can do some good things. You and I definitely see eye to eye on Pelle Larsson for sure. But Pelle Larsson, to me, is more of a seventh guy. He plays about 16 minutes a game, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, but he can't really dribble. He's not a knockdown shooter. He's a nice role player, kind of, but again, it's like with Kerr Kriisa. If you're playing him 30 minutes, Tommy Lloyd's genius might get you through the regular season, but that's going to be a problem when you hit the tournament.
Yeah, no doubt. I agree 100% about Pelle Larsson. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's wings. And to be fair, Dalen Terry stays in school. This team probably goes to the Final Four. Like, I believe that in my heart of hearts that they had the wings last year, Benedict Mather and Dalen Terry. And this is the crazy part about college basketball. it's not just about landing the guys. It's the timing and how it matches up with the newcomers and the guys that are leaving. And so it's a Rubik's Cube, to be sure, every single year in college basketball. And it's just been a really long time since Arizona got that Rubik's Cube where all the colors were on the same side. By the way, which I've never done in my life, I still consider that like a miracle that people can do.
We had Brad Allis on yesterday, and he said that you're actually a very good basketball player, Jody Ayler. Now, I've seen Brad Allis play basketball. Is that in comparison to Brad Allis, or are you actually a good basketball player?
I'm a good hooper. I can now say this at 41. I'm a good basketball player. I do a little bit of everything. I'm a slasher. I like to play with that edge. I'm a talker. I love playing basketball, man. Pick up hoops. There's nothing better than that. Do you play? Do you play hoops?
Oh, I do play. I do play.
Give me the Mike Luke. Give me the Mike Luke breakdown. What do you?
Well, here's the Mike Luke Here's the Mike Luke breakdown. Essentially, is that I shoot a lot of threes. I run around. I have a pretty quick release. I'm actually fairly athletic for my size and my disposition. But fringe high school player on at a great program, so I can I get picked up. I'll put it to you like that. But you have to know that. But you have to know what you're getting with me, though. Hey, one thing to know. Did you know Saul Bookman is the all-time leading free throw shooter in Arizona high school basketball history?
What?
Right. Can you believe
For
that?
real?
Yeah, no, seriously. I was looking up an article when I was doing some freelance work for the Daily Star like 10 years ago. And I was looking up a guy named Sammy Wade that played at Pueblo. And I see at the top the longest list of made free throws in a row. Saul Bookman right there. He doesn't talk about it nearly enough.
No, you should talk about it all the time. I put together during Super Bowl week, I did a media pickup game, and there was some national. Doug Gottlieb played with us. We had Jason McIntyre from the Herd. I should have asked Saul to join in. I didn't even know he hooped. I don't know who hoops. Like, to your point, you and I share probably a similar trait. If you look at me showing up to a basketball court, I'm a gangly, razor thin, 6'1", extremely white, redheaded dude that wears a headband. Which I've reconsidered a little bit. The Creighton kid made me reconsider my headband. It's really, for me, it is a functional for sweat purposes only. It's not really a fashion statement. But I can hoop, and if you sleep on me, I'm gonna get you, and I'm gonna get you to the bucket. And I love it, man. You know who the best hooper of Tucson media probably that I've ever played against is probably also the most accomplished from the Tucson media alumni group, and that's Ryan Radke. Ryan Radke.
Oh, I could see Ryan.
Very good hooper. Big, strong, athletic. He is I only played a few times with him, but Radke can hoop for sure.
Right. I could see that. I could definitely see that, especially too. I'd like to see Ryan trash talk with that booming, deep voice.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic. By the way, guy right here, Derek Pipko, Jody has entered the transfer portal. All right. I wanted to get your take on Arizona football here, but first, have you heard about the term for the 4 U of A big men that I've used all year? It's the official
4 peaks.
Yeah, the 4 peaks right there. Now, a lot of people dismiss it and say, well, you know what? Dylan Anderson, Henry Vasar, they do their work behind the scenes. You know what does their work in front of the scenes? 4 Peaks, the official brew of PHNX Sports. New coach, new GM. The Cardinals have the 3rd pick in the draft. I believe they should choose Will Anderson. It's a big opportunity for our team, the best place to take on this pivotal moment and the rest of the NFL draft. April 27th at 4 Peaks, 8th Street Pub. Jacob Franklin says he's there right now. Must be 21 years up to enjoy. And I want to get Jody's take on that pick here in just a second. But also, Tap and Bottle. We had Tap and Bottle watch parties all year. A lot of people showed up. Downtown, fun location. Or you can go to the north side. Scott and Rebecca do a great job. And you can get 4 Peaks there as well. Food trucks, you name it, they got it. Check it out. Who would you pick with that pick?
I would trade down, but if I stuck, I would take Will Anderson. Can I tell you a quick Tap and Bottle connection? You know, Rebecca was an academic advisor at the University of Arizona, and I was a student employee, and I can't remember if I worked when she was there. It might have been the very tail end, or I came back and did some like they used to do these things called Pizza with a Professional, where you'd sit down with college students and tell them. But Rebecca, good people. She's good.
Oh, people. Yeah. Oh, no, they're great. They've been in my corner for about 10 years now. Awesome people. Very fortunate. You're right, though, about Will Anderson. I would trade down, but I think with the Cardinals, you have to be able to hit on that pick, and I think he's a very safe pick.
Yeah, For sure. For sure.
So,
They got so many needs, and edge is certainly way at the top. It's kind of a no-brainer if they stay at
right.
3.
Let's talk Arizona football. Now, I'll be honest, obviously going out to practice and whatnot, Jody, I thought the Jedd Fisch hire was bizarre. I didn't get it at all, and I think we talked about this last time. I didn't, this guy's never really been in consideration for a job, never really, kind of goes from, school to school to program to program. But I'll tell you what, watching him on the ground day in and day out, being able to bother the coaches in the manner in which this has been a home run hire, in my opinion, so far. Because this dude is literally at the office at 6 a.m. He's leaving at 8 p.m. or whenever it is. He's putting in 12, 13-hour days. The staff all works as one. Whenever we interview a recruit, they always say, man, they recruit us harder after we commit. There is something to be said in Arizona for having somebody, and I think this is actually why Dillingham was a good hire too. Somebody that wants to be there, that isn't looking at it like, all right, well, I'll do the bare minimum to get out of here. And I think that's where both Arizona schools hit the nail on the head.
Here's where I think Jedd Fisch was a good hire for Arizona. I think Kenny Dillingham is hired at ASU because Jedd Fisch was hired at U of A. Yeah. Meaning, I think the influence of that hire where you didn't have to go big, old, recycled name. You didn't have to go for some high salary dude that had some resume, even though his best days were behind him. I think the hiring of Kenny Dillingham to me was either directly or indirectly influenced by what Jedd Fisch has done at Arizona. Now, he's also benefited from having absolutely zero expectations for Arizona football. Yes. Nobody expects anything. So if you do anything, everybody's going to celebrate it. This season for Arizona football, the year 3, man, it is where everything comes together or falls apart. Mike Stoops went 6-6 in his 3rd year at Arizona. Right. Now, a couple more years, he would go 8-5 and have the Nick Foles, Rob Gronkowski season. But it was year 3 that he saved his job because at that point they were coming off
3 and 8 seasons in a row. Yeah.
Yeah. Rich Rodriguez, same thing, right? You inherit a good roster, have a good couple of years, the first 2. Now what are you going to do year 3? All year guys, wins 10 games. It's the only time Anu Solomon sort of validated all that hype we had. Yeah, he stayed healthy and he won all those high school state championships for Bishop Gorman and then won 10 games 1 year for Arizona. So to me, it's like all that hard work Jedd Fisch has done, and I agree with you. I have nothing negative to say about it. I'll say this. He's got to make Arizona this year like a can't-miss, must-see football game, and it's been better than expected, but they still don't have much sizzle. And I think there's got to be a real reason this year to dive deep into Arizona football.
Jody, as always, you hit the nail on the head right there, because here's the thing. If you're Arizona last year, it was about showing that improvement. You went from 1 win to 5 wins. Now you've got to be able to bring in the common fan. And honestly, when you look at the roster and offense, and again, the defense is still a problem, Mark. We know that, but people watch offense. Let's be honest here. Chicks dig the long ball. And with the quarterback position, you got Delora back, who was inconsistent, but still a wildly big upgrade over what they had in the past. And Jody, this was the first time I've ever said this at the University of Arizona, that I thought last year, and granted you lost Dorian Singer, but I thought that Arizona had about as good a receiving core as there was in the country. Between Jacob Cowling, T-Mac, Dorian Singer. You obviously lose Dorian Singer. You get those 2 back. You've got some other players as well. There's a lot to like about this team on paper.
A lot to like. I agree with you about the wide receivers, and I still think, to your point, having 2 of those dudes back still gives them one of the best wide receiver duos in the conference and the potential to have one of the best wide receiver duos in the country. Because I think what we saw from T-Mac as a freshman is this dude's going to make plays, and I think more opportunities, more chemistry. This is what it comes down to again, and I'm curious if you agree, is it's the quarterback position. It's always the quarterback position, and that's always been the hang up for Arizona football. Is I can count on one hand the number of seasons that a quarterback has had that have mattered, that has generated a buzz. Right. There's been a lot of quarterbacks that have tried. There's been a lot of quarterbacks that show flashes. Jaden Delora certainly showed some flashes last year. He's talked about it. I'm sure you've talked about it. He says he's more comfortable. He's ready to let it rip. He's got the playbook like the back of his hand. Great. We need to see the results of a second-year quarterback throwing to the second year of 2 of the top wide receivers. And this team needs to put up 30 points plus a game. And if they go, 6-6, but they're putting up 34 points a game and losing a bunch of 41 to 35 track meets. I can live with that, but they got to show up offensively.
And see, that's the thing. You can totally live with that if, like you said, you're putting up 38. If you're losing games 38 to 45, but you're in all of these games and you go 6-6, I think everybody will say, all right, let's get to year 4 right there. One thing to keep an eye on, though, for your vantage point up in the Valley, though, is a kid named Noah Fafita. He's an interesting guy because I've never seen, because he's really in uncharted waters right here. He's legitimately a 5'7" quarterback that at some point is going to be the starter at Arizona. And it's just crazy watching him in practice. He's got the biggest arm on the field. He moves around. The ball generally isn't knocked down. He's
5'7", like
he's
legitimately 5'7".
He's 5'7". They list him at 5'9". He's not 5'9".
That's not going to work, man. That can't work.
I would agree, but I'm just saying, just keep an eye out.
Wow.
It's interesting because you've seen 5'7" quarterbacks, but they're always like Army or military service guys that are running the wishbone or the option.
In 1998, you know what I mean? Like it feels like the last 10 years have sort of rooted out that, hey, this 5'7" kid's going to run for 1,200 yards, and maybe who knows? Listen, I'm not going to say he's got no chance. I'll root
odds
for
are
him
against him. I'm just saying that it's a fascinating thing to watch there. Now, you might say to yourself, where's a fascinating place to watch games? Illegal Pete's. I'm sure Jody Ayler has been to Illegal Pete's before.
I've been once or twice. Yeah, it was a little after my time, but I do enjoy dipping it.
It hit a little bit after my time as well, but that doesn't mean that it can't hit for the right time for other people. And nothing cures the bracket is busted in the first round like fresh limes, tequila, lots of tequila, and sweet agave. Try out an Illegal Pete's Coin Premium or Frozen Margarita. Stop by for happy hour 3 to 6 p.m. down on University, or you can go to the Tempe location and Mountain Mike's Pizza. I was in Sacramento. I didn't know that Mountain Mike's Pizza was national in the way it is. I saw a Mountain Mike's Pizza there, and I took a picture to prove it. And Mountain Mike's Pizza is here on Oracle and Wetmore. Check it out. Head over to mountainmikespizza.com or to their Mesa, Chandler, or Tucson locations to place your next order. Reminder, new diehards get a $50 voucher upon signing up. All right, Jody, we're going to disagree here, but I want to ask you before we get to this. The Pac-12 going forward, the Pac-10, the conference, what would you like to see? If it stays together, what would you like to see different about, let's say, the next 6 or 7 years than we've seen from the previous, Larry Scott, early stage George?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for the Pac-12 conference is to grow a backbone, have some pride, put out some real, there's a defeatism to Pac-12's athletics that has taken over in the last decade where I was never, for a long time, it was like, hey, the Pac-12 might not be the best college football conference, but damn it, this conference has the best offenses and great quarterbacks and a ton of points. And then
identity.
Obviously, yeah, there was an identity and we were proud of it. And we could wave that flag. And then there was always college hoops. There was Arizona, there was UCLA, there was Mike Montgomery and Stanford, there was Ernie Kent at Oregon. There were real names and identifiable, and there's real pride. There's no pride in the Pac-12 anymore. There's no pride. People don't talk about the conference. They don't brag about it. They don't stand up for it, and there's for good reason for that. It's largely fallen short of the standards that other conferences have set. We've lost territory. We've lost ground. We've lost credibility. We don't produce the same kind of NFL or NBA talent that this conference once did. And so I always looked at it man, they need a Paul Feinbaum. They need a media-centered approach that is interesting and compelling and notable. And I don't know who or what or why, but that to me is the one change. Because I honestly, Mike, I don't think there's any teams that you can add to this conference that are going to transform it in the eyes of competition. Great, SMU, San Diego State. I'd welcome them with open arms. I don't think that suddenly gets you in with the Big Ten and the SEC. So to me, it's just quit being so damn defeated about the conference. If you're going to be in the conference, be in the conference, do good work, make sure people know about your work, and stop putting I want to swear 8 times on this, but put your games on at times where people can watch them, period.
And that's the thing. That's the thing too. And let's use that UCLA Arizona game as an example. And I'm okay with Bill Walton generally. I prefer him on games where it's Washington State, Oregon State, or whatever. But my problem with this, you have a 8:30 start for Arizona UCLA with Bill Walton on the call, where he goes 20 minutes talking with Jamal Wilkes about what their favorite pastimes are. Jody, that doesn't happen in other conferences. Can you
No.
imagine Duke, North Carolina, where they have Bill Walton talking about with Jamal Wilkes about things that people don't even care about? That doesn't happen in other conferences.
No, I saw your tweet about that, and at first I was like, "Oh, come on, Mike. Bill Walton's a Pac-12 treasure." And then I think you're right when it comes to those big games. I think even like a regular season Arizona UCLA on ESPN is fine for Bill Walton.
For sure.
Why did that game start at 8:30 p.m.? What
Yes.
was the point of that being on? That, like, I don't understand.
Jody cut out, but we are hoping. There you go, Jody. You're back.
Yes, sir. If I'm the Pac-12, I am absolutely going to put my games on days. I don't have any allegiance to any day. I don't have any allegiance to any specific late night window. I'm putting my games on when TV networks want to fill the time. When it's like you want to put a Tuesday, evening Arizona UCLA college basketball game, great. I just think they need to be more flexible because whatever they're doing has not worked.
Right. And so how much does it matter to you too? And then I'm going to make kind of my case. I get a lot of people that say, well, you know what? The Big 12, it's truck stop. I think your big thing is you don't want to lose the rivalries that are in here.
Right.
Totally get that. How much of it, does it matter to you at all that these are smaller cities or that it's an academically less prestigious conference?
The Big 12 specifically?
Yeah, just as vis-a-vis Pac-12, Big 12.
No, I think there's charm in having smaller community colleges. I think that's college. I think that's Tucson is a big city, but relative to LA and San Francisco and Seattle, it's not. So I think the challenge with the Big 12 is it's largely been kind of a nondescript conference in its own right for a long time with underachieving top dogs. And so it just kind of feels like in some way you're swapping one underachieving brand for a different underachieving brand. But I think that's also, I had to kind of look at that and probably say that's an outdated take because I think the Big 12 is clearly surpassed the Pac-12 in college basketball specifically, and even in college football, you could certainly make that case. Although I would probably stack Oregon, UW, and
I think football is essentially a wash.
A wash, yeah.
My case is mainly for basketball because I think it's hard to argue with the success the Big 12 has had. Now, granted, knock on wood, they didn't have a team in the Final Four this year, but games against Kansas and Fog Allen to me would be awesome. The other thing that I worry a little bit about, Jody, and I'm curious to your take, I worry about the streaming entity. The Big 12 to me is at least. I know for the next 7 years, if Arizona's in the Big 12, you get 32 million and you're going to be on ESPN. The Pac-12 worries me if you're talking about a 75, 80% streaming. I think streaming is the wave of the future. Totally get that, but I don't believe that it's here quite yet. And I think that could possibly really limit an already overlooked product.
Yeah, I don't know I agree with you. I think it's probably more prominent. Like my parents stream all of their content.
Do they really?
They're in their 70s. Yeah. And so I feel like there's a saturation level there that makes it okay. Here's where I think the problem is. It's not about what we think the cultural societal trend is. It's where the money is right now, right? Because let's say you sign up for a streaming heavy deal. Okay, well, if streaming becomes the primary rights holders 5 years from now, they're just going to drop the Pac-12 and get the SEC and Big Ten on Amazon or Apple anyways. You're essentially a placeholder. You're not going to get any credit for being the first. You're going to get less money than even the traditional TV contracts. So I don't know what the upside is other than the typical Pac-12. We feel like we're going to be the smartest guy in the room. When reality, what you're doing is handicapping your own conference. To your point, get on ESPN, stay on ESPN. I've kind of come around on the Big 12 thing, just watching the college basketball season. And I know that's not the driver of this conversation, but you do kind of fantasize about a conference schedule where Arizona is just going toe to toe with
top
schools and
15, top
programs
20
that
teams.
matter. Yeah,
Right.
and arenas that are jam-packed with people, and then they come to McHale and it's jam-packed, and like that's old school Pac-12 college basketball. And I think the Big 12 now has usurped that, particularly if they snag Gonzaga. And then it's like, well, let's just get it on, man. Let's get it on with Kansas and Gonzaga and BYU, and let's just do it in college basketball.
And you know what else it does? It also, if you go through a Big 12 season, if you got real weaknesses, you're going to be exposed. Arizona can play all the Washington States,
Yes.
the Oregon States, the Colorados, and you know what? They're going to look fine. But it's a lot different when you're going against Kansas State. I mean, heck, they're adding Houston here in the next couple years. Schools like that, Baylor, which 2 years removed from a national title, you know your weaknesses and what you need to address, I think, very early on, where in the Pac-12, like we talked about earlier, you can disguise some of those.
Yeah, it gives you a false sense of reality. It gives you a false sense of comfort. And here's the other thing, like a Big 12 schedule does. You feel like almost, and I know this isn't 100% true, but I'm going to exaggerate a little bit. Like you feel like by the time you get to the tournament, you've already had an incredible season, right? Like you've played 9 or 10 big ticket games. That's old school Arizona basketball where, yeah, the tournament failures, or if you lose early, it still stings. It still sucks. But, you know, when you look at Arizona basketball now and they lose in the first round, you're like, well, Jesus, I haven't seen this team play more than like 3 decent games in the last 2.5 months.
Right.
And it just feels like you were left hanging once December ended. You were just waiting for the tournament and then it's over. So like, at least with the Big 12 style schedule, you're getting real deal college basketball from November until March. And then the tournament, I'm not going to call it a bonus because it's still the most important thing that matters, but it's different.
Right. Yes, Jody Ayler, the great Jody Ayler. Let me get the last readout here, and then I want to give you a big thanks. But become a Phoenix diehard today. Check out https://PHNX Locker to grab your membership and to receive exclusive content, discount on all events, merch, and access to Discord chats. Check it out. Jody, you are the absolute man. I do have a question for you, though. Would you prefer right now, putting you on the spot, 5 years from now, would you prefer Arizona in the Pac-12 or the Big 12?
I'll
do it. You want to do it?
I'd probably say Big 12, but I don't feel strongly about it. You know what I mean?
I get you.
I'll make the best of the Pac-12 if that's what we need to do.
Right. All right. You can check him out, obviously, on the drive. Jody Ayler, 910. You're the man, dude. I really appreciate your time, buddy.
Mike, I love it. I love talking hoops and football with you, and anytime, buddy.
All right. Back the A, Jody. We'll talk to you soon. For Jody Ayler, I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.